Okay, it's 1 o'clock and we are all about efficiency here, so I'm just gonna jump right into it. My video is not working today, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for you guys. So I'm just gonna be talking through my little black box today, but we are here with Todd McLain. He is the founder of Agency MVP. He started his own farmers agency back in 2009, which he grew steadily over the years, but found that he wanted a tool that would help him grow his business more consistently, which he just wasn't finding. So he created Agency MVP to really just help manage and prioritize his leads. Less than a year after creating Agency MVP and using the platform, he became a top 5 farmers agent, and that is out of 12,500 farmers agents nationally. So very impressive. He's here to talk with us today about how to close more leads using smart automation, which I'm sure we're all interested in learning about. So thanks so much, Todd, and I will pass it to you to get started.
All right. So there's quite a big stigma when it comes to internet leads, and I either find two different camps. The camp of agents who make it work and they're like scaling their their agency rapidly, just crushing it with internet leads. And you have the other camp who say, I've tried it, they suck. And I want to help agents understand that when you get into internet leads, there's a specific setup that you have to have in order to make them work. And if you think of it like an assembly line, right? Like if you go into a car manufacturer, they have figured out the most optimum, most efficient assembly line possible. And when you're thinking about internet leads, in any type of marketing, really, in our space, you got to think about, how do I first qualify the lead and what is the intent of the lead? It's kind of the same thing, where when you're buying internet leads, you got to think about the consumer. They've been aggregated in one way or another, whether it's Google AdWords that Quote Wizard's using, Facebook, social media, banner ads, right? These people are online shopping, and they see an ad and then they go, oh yeah, I want to save money with a quote, and they fill out the Quote Wizard. And then you as an agent and a couple other agents are all now fighting for that business. And so first things first, when it comes to working internet leads, I want you to make sure that you're tracking two things, okay? And these two things are critical in increasing your efficiency and your success with this type of marketing campaign. The very first thing I want you to track, and again, this goes with all types of marketing. I have a lot more marketing sources. I hit a bunch of them. You guys can ask me everything you want. I just did this to make it easy to see. But the very first thing I want you to track when it comes to intent, like, did the people that you're buying leads, did they actually want a quote? Did you get a hold of them? And did you validate them? And good news to Kelsey and Quote Wizard, you guys are kicking EverQuote's butt with a 20% higher lead to quote rate. But lead to quote rate, right? So lead to quote to me means how many leads did I buy and how many of them did I actually talk to, and did I actually pitch them a quote, right? And so what you want to, if you want to figure out like a blended number to start with, use the average of about 25%. So just going straight in, if you buy 100 leads, only expect about 25 of those to actually allow you to pitch them the quote. Like you're on the phone with them, talking to them. I'm not talking about you buy 100 leads and then you just quote 100 leads and email them, right? That's definitely not what I'm talking about, qualifying a lead, okay? So make sure you're tracking how many of those leads that you're buying are you actually talking to the person. The second thing I want you to track religiously is your zip codes. And this is not really, so if you're in a really rural area where, in a 50-mile radius, you have one or two zip codes, sorry. But if you're in a metro area, this is extremely important, especially weather-prone areas. I want you to track your closing ratio for each zip code, because when you get into internet leads, it's you have to, it's all a volume game, right? You have to buy a lot of leads. But what I don't want you to do is over a long term, I don't want you to make the mistake of not tracking your closing ratios per zip code, because what you can do is you can figure out which closing ratio, let's say for auto only, because with internet leads, you can buy either home leads, auto leads, you can buy life leads. This is specifically, I'm focused on property and casualty, home and auto. And so what I do is I intelligently buy my leads where my carrier is most competitive, okay? You'll notice that in some zip codes, I have terrible auto closing ratios. And obviously I got rid of my zip codes over here because it's proprietary, but I'm tracking which zip codes I'm gonna buy auto insurance leads from Quote Wizard in. I'm tracking which zip codes I'm gonna buy home. And every 3 months, every quarter, I go in and I download my report, and this is automatically tracked for me in MVP, but you can track it manually yourself if you want to. Doesn't matter. I know a lot of systems don't track it this way, which is really critical for me as an agency owner and making sure I spend my money wisely. I will go in every quarter and readjust my marketing spend in each zip code, or in some zip codes, like this example, where I just started getting my butt kicked. And that's because my carrier took a rate revision and other carriers took a rate decline. So now we're just super overpriced overall in home and auto in the zip code, right? So now I can turn that zip code off and start cranking on a zip code where I have much higher closing ratios. And obviously I'm going to have more quote volume in those places. So those are the two major things that you need to track is one, lead to quote, right? So you're qualifying that. And then you're going to want to track your closing ratio on home or auto so that you can buy the right leads in the right places. Let me give you another example of what I'm talking about on buying either auto or home. I'm scanning real quick for an example. Here's one. So in this zip code, I had a 22% home closing ratio, but only a 12% auto closing ratio. So do you think I would buy auto leads there? Probably not. But I would definitely buy home leads, right? So I would turn off my auto leads from that zip code and only buy home leads from Quote Wizard in that zip code. And when you do that, you know, even if it's only a 10% difference, if I'm spending 10 grand a month, that 1,000 extra dollars that I'm not wasting anymore, but now I'm spending that extra $1,000 in a zip code where my carrier is more competitive now. Like I'm just exponentially increasing the output and the efficiency of my marketing system buying internet leads, right? And if you do 10% here, 5% here, 20% here, that adds up big time when you especially think about all the renewal income that we're getting from the growth from the leads. Okay, so then that's it with reports. Those are the two major things that I find with reports. Let's dive into automation and why it's so important. Really, I also want to give you kind of some of the things I've learned, mistakes that I've learned over, you know, I help with AgencyMVP. We probably have 5,000, I haven't checked recently, but about 5,000 users. And, you know, I am really analytical, right? I want to find out what gets people to respond with automation. What are people saying that gets good response rates? And so I want to give you some of our best practices on how do you set up automation in order for it to be really successful. And I also want to kind of give you some advice around the do's and don'ts with automation. First things first, some of the don'ts with automation. When you want to send out a text message to an internet lead, right? So what happens in my system is the instant a Quote Wizard lead hits AgencyMVP, we have a automation campaign immediately start and it instantly sends a text message to that person. I've seen a lot of people, what they do is they will send out a text message that is 5 to 10 sentences long. First, if you are buying a Quote Wizard lead, now you're probably one of 3 or 4 people that are chasing this person, right? And they're getting calls from maybe a call center like Geico or Progressive. But now you are in the chase with people. If you send them a long text message that they have to read, and you're like the second person to reach out to them, they're annoyed. They're not going to respond to you at all, right? So be very, very careful with how you start your engagement with these leads. And let me show you what I do. So I have one specific producer who works my Quote Wizard leads, and he gets the SMS responses if they respond. But our very first workflow is a text that instantly sends in 1 second. Once Quote Wizard hits our MVP, it instantly sends this text. And it says, "Hi," and then their first name. "This is Todd, and my insurance agency is working hard to save you money on the auto insurance quote you requested. Would you prefer to receive your quote via email or text?" Notice I didn't say my phone number. I didn't say you can call me. I don't want them to think they have to do anything. What I want to do is tell them who I am and that we're working hard for them this instant, right? Because I want to make them feel guilty if they tell me no, stop, right? And then I want to say we're saving, to save you money. And then last thing I want them to do is to feel like they don't have to do anything, right? So I just say, "Hey, would you prefer to get it via email or text?" And what we found is this gives us the best response rate. So you should be tracking your response rate. If you're not tracking your response rate, how do you know if your automation's working or not? And this gets us a 24% response rate on our first text, okay? 24% industry average on an SMS response to a cold internet lead is really high, like super high. And so if you think about it, not only are we instantly calling these people because I get an alert and my producer, Jonathan, starts making calls. So we're definitely setting up call cadences and calls out to these people. But this helps supplement the workforce that I have to have behind these leads. And I have now, just by sending this one text, I've got 24% increase in response rate than typical just calling. And if you think about it, because my text is instantly sent, I am one of the first people to engage this person, right? And so if they tell me to send it via email or text, let's say they say text, then I've got them on the hook. I know it's a good lead. And so I'm excited about working those people. What I do as well is, just in case maybe it was a landline and it wasn't a cell phone and that text didn't work, we send them out an email also within 10 seconds of receiving it. Now, let me give you some kind of do's and don'ts on subject line for email spam. I made the mistake of putting inside the subject line it was my name and an exclamation point after, I think we were saying something like "save you money," exclamation point. You need to be really careful about subject lines, because when I was using a bad subject line, my email response open rate was, I think, 5%. And then I made some tweaks, and now our open rate is 35%. So again, if you're going to be sending out email automation campaigns, you need to be tracking your open rate, because let's think about all the times that you might have set up automation and for some reason it didn't work. Did you know why it didn't work? Well, when I was using a bad subject line and I could see that I had a 5% open rate, I knew really fast that I needed to change something about my email campaign, because nobody was opening the email, right? And then I kept making some tweaks, after I got enough, I don't recommend making tweaks quickly, right? Because if you only send it to 5 people. All right, where did I leave off, Kelsey?
We were chatting about how your email is structured and your subject lines and everything.
All right, so sorry, everybody. I'm glad a lot of people stuck around.
Yeah, I think we lost like one, which is a win in my eyes.
I guess I was doing all right, guys. All right.
Yeah.
I was on the fire. All right, let's keep going. Okay, we're back. So email open rate, extremely important to track that. Make sure, I would say a best case open rate for emails, if you're anywhere above 20%, you're golden, okay? You're not going to get much higher than 35%. I've seen some people that are hitting 40, but it could be just the marketplace that you're in and the people that you are emailing to. The other really important thing is on your follow-up in your workflows. So the big mistakes that I see in automation campaigns are agents text or they email too many times. So what's really important about your automation campaigns is make sure that you think about it from the consumer's perspective. You know, am I bugging them too many times? Because if you get marked as spam, especially how easy it is now from an iPhone to mark a number as junk, you can get in a lot of trouble with your phone number, because then now you're marked as spam with a carrier. They won't even get your text. They won't even get your phone calls. So make sure that you don't send out too many texts, especially texts. Emails, again, you just want to be really conservative. So my second text that I send out is 1 day later. So it sends out 24 hours after my first text. And it says, hi, their first name again. I worked on your auto insurance quote from yesterday. When might be a good time to discuss with you? So our response rate on second, and what I'm tracking here, so if you're not using MVP and you want to track separately, what I'm tracking are only these texts where somebody hasn't responded to the first text. Because if somebody responds to my first text, our automation campaigns stop. I'm not going to send them that second text and spam them, right? So if I have a 24% response rate on my first text, and then within 24 hours, I have a 10% response rate on my second text, I now have a 34% response rate from my text messages to my leads. Now, the average contact rate of phone calls to leads is around 15 to 20%. So now think about this. You had a system generate 34% interest automatically with no underlying employees working those. That's extremely powerful, because now if I get 10 to 20% on phone calls, now I have a 50% contact rate, and that's awesome, right? And out of those 50 that I'm contacting, then you have, you know, you're doing your quotes. So make sure that you're tracking a first and a second text message. Then we send out another email 3 days later. And I need to work on this one a little bit more because I'm not happy with my 28% response rate. But think about it this way. I have now sent a fourth automation campaign, which is now an email. So I've touched them 4 times, and I'm still getting about 28% of them to open it for the first time. So now, after I send out this fourth email automation, and by the way, if you want all of my different automation campaigns and our scripting and all that, then we can send that out, and you'll get that at the end. We'll tell you about a special offer, and we'll also send out some extra stuff for people who want it. But what we do is 3 days later, I set that up, this email here. And then what I want to do after I send out the fourth email to the leads that did not respond to me. Okay, so this is only leads that didn't respond. I'm going to automatically set them up on an X-date campaign and this X-date campaign is extremely important because you're going to get probably, I don't know, 10 to upwards of 30% of people who immediately regret going online and filling out their information because they got 5 phone calls in a row, right? They're like, oh crap, and they clam up and they don't want to do anything. That's still a good lead, okay? And why it's still a good lead is if it's the right person on the other end of the phone and they own a home or they own a car, at some point in the future, they have to have insurance. So at some point in the future, they're now in my database and I want to go after them. So what you have to make sure you do is when you're buying internet leads,
and you have your automation campaign to initially reach out to them, you have to make sure that you have another automation campaign to come in and clean up the X dates. And what I mean by that, so here's my, after the fourth email, Agency MVP automatically switches them to an X date auto no contact campaign if they don't respond to any of those four. So I'm going to go back to my workflows and show you what that looks like. So X date auto no contact. And what happens is we have some filters here, meaning, if we didn't know what they were paying, right, because we didn't talk to them, it's not going to delay the X date. And just kind of a sidetrack note about what Agency MVP can do, because it's so smart. For people that you did get a hold of and you were just too expensive, MVP will actually track their rates and delay X date automation campaigns so that you don't call them back on their next renewal if you were losing by $1,000, right? Because you're still not going to be competitive. It will actually delay until you might be competitive. So pretty cool that you can set up X date automation campaigns to be smart. But here's our X date automation campaign. And what I need to do with this campaign is look into a couple of things, which is our response rate. 18%, that's not very good on an email campaign. And it could be because the people who we didn't make contact with, maybe half of those were bad leads, right? Maybe it's a bad email address, whatever the case may be. But on these X date campaigns, because I said it was the cleanup, it's like the cleanup X date workflow. It's like getting them 6 months later if you can. I want that response rate to still be above 20%. And so there's a couple of things that I might do, like change my header, my subject line. I might change some of my verbiage, but that's what's really important, is making sure that you're tracking that in order to increase your open rate so that you might get a better response rate. And then one of the things that we discovered recently was that our SMS response rate sucks, right? We're getting a 1% response rate on our X date automation campaign. And the good news is we have some things that we're testing on the back end to get that to at least 10%. Because if you think about it, maybe we captured most of the good leads up front. And because we're getting an 18% response rate here, I'm thinking that we should get at least a 10% response rate on our SMS campaign. And again, it's because there's probably too many sentences in this SMS contact on an X date that you've never engaged with, right? So this is why it's so critical. I'm not perfect. I wish I had the perfect SMS response rate on old X date leads. But now I'm tracking it and I can tell you, hey, we screwed up and I need to change this. I need to make it shorter, sweeter, and try to get them to engage with me if they didn't engage with us when we first bought the lead, right? So those are the main things that we do with automation. Is first, make sure you have your proper automation set up when you buy the lead, and then make sure you have your automation if you didn't even get in contact with them to try to get them in the future. And of course, what we find a lot with our internet leads, something that's really, really important with internet leads, is make sure that you're tracking when you first get the lead. We're going in and quoting, I call it a validation quote. So validation quote to me means we get the lead and we start a quote and we pull their driving history. Because what I'm looking for is claims. If they have a claim, then what I'm going to do is, if I don't get a hold of them, then we're simply going to pipeline them out or schedule out a future date to call them 30 days before a claim falls off. And that has dramatically increased our closing ratio on internet leads. Because if you think about it, most of the people that we've found who are going online and shopping for insurance have had a claim in the last 3 years. They're pissed off, they had a surcharge. So what we want to make sure we do is, when we're working the leads, is looking for those types of underwriting events that really give us a leverage win in the future. So it's not immediate gratification most of the time, but if they had a claim, 6 months ago, we're going to pipeline them out 2.5 years. We want to catch them 3 years. That's when our surcharges really get reduced. we're going to track them for 2.5 years. So I'm not so upset that I didn't convert that lead because I put it into a smart pipeline where I am going to convert it in the future. And sorry, guys, I got thrown off my game with that outage. That's really how I set up my internet leads and my automation campaigns. Any other things that I can talk about? Shoot me a question on if you go into your chat. Shoot me over a question. I'm going to try to think about some other things that we've done that have really changed the game. Calling cadences. A lot of people ask me, how many times do you call? When do you call? My office doesn't really focus on a specific date to call people. Like, we don't do 1st, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 12th, 6 months, 12 months. Like, I don't do an even number of days every time based on the lead. What we do is when we get the lead, we validate it. We look at the claims history. And if we pull an MVR and it's, the lead name is John Smith, but the name on the address comes back as something else, like, okay, that's a bad lead. It's the wrong person, the phone number, wrong number. Like, we're getting credits on all those. But if we pull the quote, the driving history, and we see that, they had a claim recently, then we will try to call them about 7 to 12 times. Depends on the quality of the lead. Like, if there's no prior insurance, we might call it 7 times. If it looks like a great lead with a good house and we already know the zip code's good, right? Because we're tracking where we're buying the leads from in the first place, then we might call it up to 12 times. And if we don't get a hold of them, then we'll put them on that X date auto no contact campaign. Let me go back here. So definitely make sure you're tracking how many times you're calling. And I could tell you a statistic with our 5,000 plus users is that 60% of all sales happen after the 12th call attempt. So if you feel like you're bugging somebody after 3 call attempts, you are dramatically wasting a lot of money because you're not calling them enough times, right? And you got to constantly keep contacting these people until you get them on the phone. So what we'll do is we'll call them back to back in the first hour, right? And then we will, this is not, let me get off screen share here so I can get to our chat. There we go. We will call them back to back within the first day. So I call it, you call them. If they don't answer the phone, we immediately call them back. We don't leave a voicemail on the first call, because if they answer and they're upset on the second call, we go, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to leave you a voicemail. Now, while I got you on the phone, and that usually gets people to answer because they might screen their call on the first call, but then when they see that second call, they're like, wait, this might be important. So they answer it. So that's definitely a way that you can get people to answer. And then we always call on the second day twice. And then what we do is we just, from that point forward, we kind of just train our people to look at the lead and engage with them as they see fit, right? I have experienced producers, but in your case, if you have somebody brand new, I would just tell them, look, call them every other day until you call them 12 times, right? And try to call them at different times of the day. If the lead came in at 8 a.m. and you keep calling at 11 a.m. and they're not answering, it might be because they're at work, right? Like, look at certain things, teach your people to look at certain elements, like what time did the lead come in? Because that might be when they'll answer the phone. And try different times of day. Don't just have your people sit down and start dialing down a list and wondering why you're not getting a hold of people. Change it, morning, afternoon, evening, schedule different times to reach out to people based on when the lead actually came in. Do you still X-date them even if they tell you to stop texting? I turn off texting, right? Because if they say stop, you do not want to get into a TCPA compliance problem. But we still will call them and we'll still email them. And what we'll typically do is just delay it for a year. So we'll pipeline it out for about a year, and then we'll re-engage them at their next renewal for a quote, and we'll call them. But we definitely would never text somebody if they said stop.
We do have some
Any
extra
other
questions. Yeah, we've got some in the Q&A box. We have an agent who's curious that if they do sign up with Agency MVP, do you guys offer some sort of onboarding process that would allow them, like teach them how to import the data or do it for them when they're first starting?
Absolutely. So I think, and I'm biased, I think Agency MVP has the best onboarding and training possible because I'm an agent and I understand what you guys need. So what happens is when you sign up for Agency MVP, and by the way, there is a special that we're running for new customers. If you go to agencymvp.com and click sign up and use the coupon code webinar99, you're also going to get an email following this with that coupon code. Then it's only $99 a month for the first 3 months instead of $249 like it is normally. So a pretty big discount up front. But when you sign up, then you get access to our success coaches. And our success coaches are extremely trained on what you do in the office. They know exactly what you go through, what you have to deal with. Some of them were producers inside the property and casualty space. So they have one-on-ones to get you onboarded and trained up front, helping you set everything up, go through training. And then you also have access at any time to schedule a 15 or a 30-minute time with a success coach if you have future questions, like if something came up. The code again is webinar99. So all uppercase and then no spaces, webinar99. There you go. And yeah, so our training, hands down the best. I want to make sure that if you guys have questions, there's also a chat feature within our system where you can do live chat. Quick questions get answered immediately. You can call us at any time. So yeah, we have a library of videos, how-to tutorials, all sorts of things to get you going.
Is this deal good for agents who are already with Agency MVP?
I knew I was going to get asked that. No, it's a promo that we're doing. Plus, Eric, I think you get cost share. Come on, man.
That's funny. I do have an agent asking, they're saying that they usually call their leads within seconds. They text them immediately. They quote them whether or not they speak to them or not. And then they email them the quote and continue to follow up with them via text, email, and phone. But it doesn't appear to be working. So I know you touched on this a little bit. You know, maybe the verbiage isn't correct or their email.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just what do you have to say on that?
Let me hit on that because this is really important. And again, I'm going to go back to that assembly line approach. If even with our first automation campaign where we're getting 34% response rate by text, you got to think then I have 66% of people who are not responding most likely, and that's a little dramatic because we are getting phone as well. So let's say 50% of my leads are not responding at all. If you're quoting, think about how much time it takes you to quote, right? If you're quoting and it takes you 10 minutes, whatever the number you have to, this is where writing down the numbers and making sense of it in your office is really important. In my office, it takes about 10 minutes to do a solid auto and home quote. I don't have my people do a solid home quote, an auto quote, if we do not get them to respond to us, okay? All we do is look at the driving history because all we're gonna do is find out, one, instantly, is this the right person at the right address? And two, is there an underwriting event like a claim on the auto insurance that gives us some sort of future advantage in the lead? So I don't want to waste 50% of my time doing a quote that takes 10 minutes. If it took 60 seconds, now we're in a whole different ball game. You know, if you have a tech system in your carrier that does quotes really fast, then I'm not speaking to that, right? But in my office, if it takes 10 minutes, I'm definitely not doing that. And you got to think too, with internet leads, you're going to have a large number of internet leads that will never respond to you, okay? And that just comes with the game. In my system, I have overall with Quote Wizard an 8% closing ratio. And so, and that's after about 36 months. So the first 90 days, my closing ratio is not good. It's like 1.5 to 2%. But then because of how we follow up and how we engage and constantly are following up, and claims falling off is a huge one, my closing ratio at the end of the day, after 3 years of doing using Agency MVP, shows that it's 8% on these leads. And when you think about the renewal income that I'm getting and the new business commissions, I can definitely see a huge positive ROI after 3 years buying internet leads. But you have to have these systems in place. And then based on your office, you have to think through, am I being efficient with our time? Because if you're sending out the full quote and doing the full quote, and half of the time the person's never even going to respond to you in the first place, then you should rethink about how much time you're spending in validating and engaging people up front, right? So hopefully that helps you think through that.
Awesome. And then we do have kind of an esoteric question here, but an agent is saying that EasyLink's Rater usually doesn't integrate, but saw that Agency MVP does integrate with them. They want to know if that's only if they use the PL Rater or their AMS. I don't know what that means. I'm hoping you do.
If you are a member of EasyLink's rating system and you use that rating platform, we just finished an integration with their rating platform. So the workflow that would happen is an internet lead comes into your Agency MVP account, and then you can transfer that data straight into your EasyLinks to start a quote. So we are now integrated with EasyLinks. I think they were working out a couple of kinks, so I don't think I was supposed to officially say we're integrated yet, but we're integrated. So definitely, if you use EasyLink's rating system, and we're also integrated with PL Rater. So we did integrate with PL Rater, and then we're almost done integrating with Turbo Rater. So we're definitely doing tons of integrations on the back end, and we're integrated with Zapier. Lots of different integrations.
Very great. And I do just want to mention we've had agents commenting in the box, for those of you who can't see it, that Agency MVP is worth the full price, even without the promo code. So obviously some agents on the call use you guys already and love your service. So that is great. Thomas wants to know if you integrate with Quote Rush.
Quote Rush, I've not heard of Quote Rush before. We have an open API, which means if we have a user that needs an integration, we will put that in our queue and try to get that done. Really, the biggest problem that we've found, since we have our own in-house tech team, most people have their tech team overseas, is really just trying to get the other person to integrate with us. So it's really simple on our end to integrate with a lot of platforms.
Cool. Well, I think that's everything that came in. Again, we mentioned to everyone, but everyone will be receiving an email following up this webinar that includes all the promotional information. So no need to, hurry to write all this down necessarily. You will definitely get a follow-up email on this. But Todd, thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for the weird power outage.
Yeah, of course. I can't believe that happened. That's never happened before. So, and thanks for everyone who stuck with us and stuck it out until we came back on. Sounds like Agency MVP just literally covers all the bases.
Kelsey, we're also releasing VoIP, like a full VoIP system in the next couple of weeks. So.
Oh, all right, cool. Well, you guys heard it here first. All right. Well, thank you so much again. Everyone have a great rest of your day.
Bye.